Hi. So more than 60% of US game players only buy 2 games a year or fewer, survey finds. Only 4% buy more than 1 game a month. That's not surprising, actually, especially considering the amount of fleecing that's going on in the gaming industry at large. Now, we just had recently Xbox coming out and raising the prices of their Game Pass tiers, on top of raising the prices for their hardware, on top of putting out a Xbox Ally Asus collab, which is $600 for the base model and $1,000 for the X model. So Xbox has been complicit in basically eroding any goodwill that they had with the players that they've been working with over the last couple of years in this console generation alone. That's ridiculous to me. That's really ridiculous to me. To the point of where now you're seeing in, I think it's Costco's, or it might be Sam's Clubs, where these consoles are being sold off. Now, the reason why they're doing that is most likely they're trying to get rid of their Xbox Series S and Series X models to make room for more of the ROG Ally models. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because I feel like they're just increasingly pricing out their demographic. You still have people that are legitimately canceling their Xbox Game Pass subscriptions en masse to the point of where it froze the website. You have people basically really mad at what's going on. You can only legitimately blame the tariffs for one price hike. So, and we're on the second price hike for hardware. So there's a lot of questions that need to be asked, and there's a lot of trust that's been eroded. I feel like the majority of this issue, and I think Laura Fryer talked about this in a recent video, I actually had a chance to watch that earlier, is trying to push for some form of equity in the console space by making it so that everybody has to suffer equally. It's making the whole atmosphere, the whole ecosystem just like unmanageable, to the point where people are just kind of like, they're going to move on to something else. You're going to lose your entire audience just off of trying to make as much money as possible, because you're making the customers pay for your missteps. Granted, there are going to be some issues that are going to be going on or whatever, but if it's really based off of, say, the tariffs or anything else, it's going to be a singular price hike. It's not going to be a continual price hike and more price hikes on top of your price hikes, so you can price hike while you price hike. When you see stuff like that, people are legitimately trying to fleece you. Well, let's get into this here. The majority of video game players in the United States only buy 1 or 2 games a year, survey has found. Market research company Circana's senior director, Matt Piscatella. Oh, it's Matt Piscatella. Oh, yeah. So, here's the thing. Here's a little story. Matt Piscatella put out a claim that the majority of Switch owners were female. But this was off of a circular thing where he was quoting a thread that he made on Twitter and tried to use the thread that he made as the actual source. There was no real definitive information that was there. It was just assessments that are made off of like the data that he had on hand at the moment. So every Switch owner that participated in this survey, whatever, put this thing out, and they tried to base a whole argument off of that. That's why I groan when I hear Matt Piscatella's name. Like, he basically put out a statement, tried to force a narrative based off of a thread that he started in order to create some feedback loop and prove that like there's more female gamers than male gamers in this ecosystem, or basically in the entirety of the gaming industry or the player base. Tried to create a narrative that there's more female gamers than male gamers in the player base, and it just came off as really slimy. So obviously whenever I see Matt Piscatella's name, like there's times where I'm like, okay, that makes sense, but then there's other times where I'm like, nah, where'd you get your information from on that? So like when you see Matt Piscatella's name, you have to really take it with a grain of salt, because I don't trust analysts as far as I can throw them, and it's mainly for a good reason. So Matt Piscatella shared data from his Q3 2025 Future of Video Game survey, specifically its data on purchasing frequency among players in the US. According to the data, 18% of players in the US buy a new video game about once every 6 months, while 12% buy about once a year. The survey also found that 33% of players buy a new game less often than once a year, meaning a combined 63% of players buy 2 games or fewer every year. On the other end of the scale, 22% of players buy a new game around once every 3 months, with 10% saying that they buy roughly once every month. Just 4% say they buy more than 1 game a month. Commenting on the findings, Piscatella suggested that those 14% of players who buy 1 game or more per month are mainly responsible for the continued trajectory of full-price games. Hyper-enthusiast, price-insensitive players are really keeping things going, especially in the non-free-to-play gaming space, he noted. So Piscatella also pointed out that if these numbers seem unusual, it's likely because anyone who follows them already falls within that 14% bracket of players who buy a game once or more per month, and therefore may not be aware of the bigger picture. Now, I don't necessarily, like I said, I'm kind of side-eyeing this data, because mainly there's a contingent of people that say that they're going to purchase things on Twitter, and they don't. They're mainly just, they're fronting, or they're basically putting up a show, putting on airs, as we used to call it, so that people can look at them and say, oh, that guy's got big money, or whatever. There's this whole notion of, especially on Twitter, on social media, where people will try to accuse you of being broke because you refuse to buy things or you have standards. It's like when you're a teenager and everybody's like fucking lying about whether they had sex or not. Like, yeah, I had sex and she did this and this. Like nigga, you lying. That's how I feel about this particular article. People can say anything on a survey. You have to actually look at the number of people being surveyed. What is it, like 100 people being surveyed? Is it 10 people being surveyed? And then information skews based off of the number of people being surveyed. People basically could lie on surveys. Like, it's hard to tell. Like, I mean, there's certain surveys where you're like, okay, if I look at the data from that, it makes sense. It does. But then there's other times where I'm like, especially when I've seen what Matt Piscatella's done, I don't know if I can trust 90% of the shit that's going on in this survey. Before replying, know that even seeing this post likely puts you into that hyper enthusiast bucket. So the actions of you and your immediate cohort likely do not match those of the general gaming audience, he explains. In a separate post related to his point on hyper enthusiast, price insensitive players, Piscatella suggests that the reason game prices are rising and deluxe editions are becoming more commonplace is because 14% of players are likely less to worry about the cost of games, meaning most pricing is focused on them. Well, it's the whales, is what you're saying. You're saying that there are a few number of whales that exist that will buy anything just because, and that's every community, every fan of something. There's a small contingent of whales, and they dictate the entirety of the industry off of that. That's plausible. I can actually see that being a thing. It's like how you have people that are sitting around buying deluxe editions. Yeah, people will go and buy the deluxe edition of something sight unseen, mainly because they want to have it, or there's some collector's thing to it. I'm not dogging anybody for that, but it is kind of interesting that that's a thing. I've been talking about this trend for years when it comes to game spending, he wrote. Why are there premium gamepads, $149 collector editions, pro consoles in general rising prices? Because their price incentive, affluent players are the ones doing more of the spending as everyone else ships more to free to play. I think they're going to things that are more within their pay range, what they're willing to put up with, what they're willing to pay for. I think that's the issue. That's more than anything. I remember the Silk Song video that I put out where people were kind of mad that they were pricing the game at $20. I saw comments where people were like, Silksong deserves to be more because blah, blah, blah. Like, making a game $70, $80, and $90 off the bat is already going to price out a large portion of your intended audience. These are the types of things that will cause your studio to close. These are the types of things that will shutter your gaming division of your parent company. Another report published by ComScore last year found that 82% of American video game players had made an in-game purchase in the past 12 months, highlighting that while some players may not necessarily be buying a lot of games, they're still putting money into the industry, albeit through in-game purchases and free-to-play titles. Well, that's the service model. That games as a service was such a big thing that they thought that they're going to keep that going for as long as possible. I don't even think service games are doing that well as of late. You got maybe one or two. Fortnite's obviously going to be making decent money. Marvel Rivals is probably still holding it down. But I don't think that that's going to be something that's going to be a big thing in a couple of years. I think that train has sailed. The train has sailed. So when you have people stating that more than 60% of US gamers only buy 2 games at a time, you also have this saying that people are spending the majority of their time playing older games. So Ben Porter, director of consulting of video game market intelligence agency Newzoo, is giving a GDC talk this week that picks out some of the highlights from the firm's annual look at the state of the industry. PC Gamer was fortunate enough to get a sneak peek at the slides and the takeaways that PC gaming is bigger than ever and we love to play older games. The results are extrapolated from a yearly in-depth survey of 73,000 players alongside of data from over 10,000 gamers. So notice that, let me look at something real quick. The article here, or the tweet that he is using, doesn't have any of the data. Like what is the focus group? What's the number of people being like surveyed in a situation? Notice that information is not available here. But if I go to this PC Gamer article, this pops up. The results are extrapolated from a yearly in-depth survey from 73,000 players alongside data from over 10,000 games. An estimated 873.5 million players in 2023, rising to 907 million in 2024. There's more information that's here. There's more meat in this whole thing than in the entirety of Matt Piscatella's like circular ass post. That's the type of shit I'm talking about. I know you all like this one. It handily beats out the console audience, of whom there's an estimated 653.1 million in 2024. So 653.1 million console gamers in 2024, 907.5 million in the same year. And the data further shows, in Newzoo's own words, that these 900 million PC players are heavily skewed towards older live service games. The data only shows from January 2024 to December 2024, or 67% of player hours on PC were spent on a game that was 6 or more years old. A further 25% of player hours were spent on games that were 2 to 5 years old, and the remaining 8% of the time was spent on games that are less than 2 years old. 7.1% of the total hours that were spent on Counter-Strike Global Offensive, Counter-Strike 2, 6.4 were in League of Legends, 6.2 were in Roblox, 5.8 were in Dota, 5.4 were in Fortnite. Like, again, there's a breakdown here. There's actual breakdown information here. This is why I look at Matt Piscatella, I'm like, I don't fucking know if I can trust the words you're saying. But yeah, it's like, okay, so there's a lack of people buying games, but then if you look at the PC end, people are playing old games. Anyways, I'll leave that to you to figure out who's telling the truth and who isn't. Thank you for joining for this. I'll see you next boss fight. Take care.